Hey there. Thanks for tuning in. You ready for another episode of my Bigfoot sighting? Alright then, let's do this.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, love's in the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.
If you'd like to be able to listen to the show without ads and have full access to bonus content, that's an option. To find out how, please go to mybigfootsighting.com.
My Bigfoot sightings are something that is on my mind quite often. For example, my first one when I was about 6 years old, it was me and my family. We had taken a trip up north to the Superior National Forest, which is located deep in northern Minnesota, stretches into southern Ontario. We were camping in the forest, going from site to site, just enjoying ourselves, having a good time. And I remember one night, our tour guide brought us to this small camp. There was this really primitive campground. There was a cabin that was basically just four walls and a roof, and provided some place to sleep at night. So I remember this like it was yesterday. It was nighttime. Me, my brother, my sister are in one room, and my parents were in the other room. There's two rooms. And so I remember it must have been a full moon because there was moonlight coming through at night. It was a pretty bright night. And I remember there was one window. It's just one basic window on the wall. It was dark. It was nighttime. And I remember waking up because something was banging on the cabin walls. And it was loud. And I remember I woke up and I'm looking at the window and there's this huge shadow, like a huge person. I couldn't tell if it was a person or what, but there's a figure there, dark figure. And it was banging on the walls. It was banging, making a racket. I start screaming. My brother and sister wake up. They're screaming. The parents run in. What's going on? And of course, the banging eventually stopped. And I was like, "What the heck was that? I just saw something in the window." And my dad's like, "It was just a bear. It's fine. Go back to bed." And that was kind of that. But time goes on, and I realized that bears don't bang on cabin windows, on cabin doors. It makes no sense. But that was basically my introduction to this world of Sasquatch. And it was quite exciting, I'll say, at the time, as a little kid waking up in the middle of the night, deep in the woods, and there's some giant banging on the cabin you're sleeping in. So that was my first, let's say, encounter. Of course, I can't confirm nor deny, but that's what happened. But getting to my main encounter, the one that just happened. This happened on August 18th, 2021. Basically, the story goes, my brother was getting married in Washington. So the wedding was going to be there. We were all planning on traveling there. But I had some time off of work, and I said, why don't I go a week early and do some hiking somewhere in Washington? Because I've never been to the States. I love the Pacific Northwest, all the pictures and videos. I mean, it looks like paradise. So I kind of was just looking around at different state parks and where could I go. And I came across a lake. It was called Lake Diablo up in the Northern Cascades. Now, I'd never heard of the Northern Cascades. I looked into it. Apparently, it's the second least visited national park in the U.S., and it's idyllic. It looks like paradise. I mean, it's untouched wilderness. There's not too many people there. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. So I decided that's where I'm going. So I fly out there. I'm going to spend a week hiking and exploring. So I get there. It was Monday. I got there on Monday. So the first day, second day, Monday and Tuesday, I went to different hiking areas and different mountains and to the ocean and all this different stuff, just having a great time, enjoying the beautiful summer weather and the scenery around me. That was the first 2 days. Everything was great. But on the 18th, it was a Wednesday, I had stopped by this ranger station in Marble Mount. It's a city somewhere over there. And I got some information about some good hiking trails and trailheads that you can check out in that area. So I decided to check out the Sourdough Mountain trailhead. It was about a 13-mile hike, 6.5-ish miles in each direction, with about 6,000 feet of elevation. Now, being from the Midwest, I'm not used to mountains. Didn't realize that 6,000 feet of elevation in 6 miles is quite a bit. It's quite a strenuous hike. So, that being said, I got to the trailhead about 10 a.m., which is kind of late, but that detail is important later on. But I got there about 10. There was a couple there, an Asian couple. I met up with them, introduced myself, and we decided to hike together. So there was 3 of us in this hiking group, me and this couple that I had just met. So we set off from the trailhead about 10-ish, maybe 10:15 at the latest. And we're hiking. Everything's great. It's a strenuous hike. Don't get me wrong. It was very tiring, but it was awesome. I mean, you're out in nature. It's a beautiful summer day. I mean, the sun is shining. The birds are chirping. It's just perfect. So essentially, we're hiking for about, I want to say 2 or 3 hours. We get to, in the middle of the mountain, there's a campground for backpackers. It's not really a campground. It's more of just like a exposed gully with some boulders strewn about. It's kind of this exposed area in the side of the mountain. There's a little brook, a little creek. So about this time, it was 1:30. It was around 1:30 p.m. I'm hiking. I'm ahead of the 2 behind me. I'm hiking, and all of a sudden, I hear a wood knock. And it sounds like somebody's hitting a tree with another tree. I heard a knock, and then I heard knock, knock. So there's 3 knocks total, 1 knock, and then the 2 in rapid succession after it. And now I'm turning around, I'm like, oh my goodness, what makes that noise in the forest? I know it's not a woodpecker. I've been interested in the Sasquatch subject for years and years, so I'm familiar with the symptoms, I guess, of one of these creatures. There's wood knocks and howls and all sorts of different noises that they make. But I heard the wood knock, and I turned around on the couple. I was like, "Did you guys hear that?" And they weren't really paying attention. They were kind of further back, probably about 50 yards or so. They didn't really care. They probably didn't hear it, but of course, I pull out my phone. I'm like, I got to get this on video, So I start recording, maybe about like 3 minutes, trying to see if there would be any more tree knocks, so I could get it on camera. So, of course, none of that happened. We just kept hiking. The excitement wore off, and we just kept going. Kind of forgot about it. So we're getting up. We keep hiking for another few hours. We're getting above the tree line and into the alpine meadows. There's just berries and flowers and bees. I mean, it was just a perfect picture. It was beautiful. It was so beautiful. And we get up into the alpine switchback, so it's really steep now, but we're seeing people come down. There's probably about 4 or 5 people hiking back down because we had started so late. We didn't know that you should have started a little bit earlier than 10 a.m. when we did. So everyone's already coming back down the mountain. And me and this couple, we get up to the peak. It's absolute paradise. It's so beautiful in any direction you see. The sun is shining. There's snow on the ground, but it's 70 degrees. I mean, it's all you could ever ask for. It was so beautiful. So we're sitting there relaxing, having some snacks, just enjoying, soaking up the view. And we were probably there for about half an hour, I want to say. So we got there around 3:30-ish, and we started leaving around 4. So 4 p.m., we start making our way back down the mountain. We're the last ones up on the peak. There was nobody coming up behind us. We were the last ones. So we start making our way down, and I'm just enjoying myself. I'm taking pictures and videos and kind of stopping to smell the roses, as they say, just enjoying myself. And the couple that I was hiking with, they kept going back down gradually. They kept getting further and further away. I fell back. I fell back until they essentially disappeared from view. So I was essentially hiking alone. So I'm having the time of my life, just enjoying it, taking all these beautiful photos and just having a great time. And I'm hiking down, and it was about 5 o'clock at this time, a little after 5 p.m., the golden hour. You know, the sun is coming down through the trees, and the trees up there in the Pacific Northwest, those evergreens, they have this moss that hangs down everywhere. Everything is covered in lichens or moss, whatever it is. And the way the sun was coming through the trees, it was hitting the moss, and it was just glowing. You know, it looked like these glowing golden lanterns hanging from all the trees. It was so beautiful. I was enjoying myself, just soaking up the moments. It was perfect. It was about a little after 5. So I'm looking at this, and I actually took a picture because that moss with the light coming through, that was kind of the last normal thing that happened. Because after I'm taking a picture of the moss, it's so beautiful. The birds are chirping. There's wind blowing through the leaves. It's gorgeous. And so I keep hiking, and then I start to hear like rustling in the bushes behind me. Now, when you're hiking down a mountain, if you look to your left, that's the drop off. That's the valley. That's where the view is. And over to your right, that's the side of the mountain. So that's where the forest is, the rocks, that's to your right. Drop off is to the left. So over my right shoulder, I hear like rustling in the bushes. And I'm like, wow, it was kind of loud. I was like, there must be an animal, you know, some sort of chipmunk or beaver, something a little bigger, because it was making some noise. So I kind of turn around and I'm looking and don't really see anything behind me. So I don't think anything of it. I just keep going. And I kept going. And then I was hearing the rustling, but it sounded like footsteps. And I'm looking back down on the trail behind me because I'm thinking there's somebody there. But I know nobody was on the mountain. Like, we were the last 3 people to leave the peak. And there was nobody coming up. So I'm getting a little freaked out, just a little bit. I'm like, don't know what that is. But the weird thing is that when I would start walking, the footsteps would start again. When I stopped, it would stop. So like I purposely like stopped my steps to see if it was still doing that, and it was. And so I'm getting a little nervous, you know. I'm like, well, I can't see whatever that is. I don't know what that is, but I'm sure it's fine, whatever. And I keep going. And that's when, after those rustling, that footsteps episode, after that, the forest became totally silent. And I don't know if anybody's ever experienced that. I've read about it, I've heard it, but when it actually happens, it's such a loud silence. You know, it's deafening because there's no more birds chirping. There's no wind. It felt like there was like a blanket that was put on the atmosphere, and I couldn't hear anything. It was totally muffled. It was totally silent, and that was crazy. I couldn't understand what was going on. Everything was totally silent. So now I'm kind of getting a little freaked out, you know, because why is it silent all of a sudden? And then after it became silent like that, and again, this is all happening probably in the span of like 2 minutes from the footsteps to the silence. It's silent. I keep walking, and it feels like there's laser beams burning a hole through my head. It feels like somebody is staring at me. And it was so powerful. It was so intense. I've never felt anything like that before, where, you know, sometimes you can tell if a friend or somebody's looking at you across the room. You kind of turn and look at them because you can feel it. But it felt like an apex predator was staring at me, and I felt like I was like a deer or a prey animal. I felt like I was in danger because something was staring holes in the back of my head. And so now I'm kind of worried pretty bad. So I'm turning around. I keep walking. I'm turning around constantly over my right shoulder to see what's going on. I'm kind of starting to get an idea, but when you're in the moment, the logical, rational thoughts, you don't really have time for that. You're just reacting. You're just going. So I'm walking, and I reach a small little turn, and it's in a little clearing in the trail. And I turn around, and I turn over my right shoulder, and there he is. He's sitting probably about 60 yards away. It's like when I turned, my eyes locked onto this thing. And it was like I had tunnel vision. Like this creature was the only thing in focus, and everything around my vision was blurry. Like I could only I could only see this thing, and it was when I locked eyes with it, it almost felt like hypnotic, like I was in a trance. Like I couldn't look away, you know, and I was just staring at this thing, and I was overcome with like shock and awe, and it's almost like I felt reverence because I'm staring at this thing. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's a Sasquatch. They're real. I'm looking at one. There he is. I'm 4 miles up a mountain in the middle of the wilderness, and there is a Sasquatch. It was real dark. It was real dark brown to almost black. If you've ever seen the Patterson Gimlin film, Patty, he looked, or she, I don't know what the gender was, but the Sasquatch was kind of that color, but it was a little bit more auburn, a little bit more brown, but it was dark. It was dark enough to where everything's green and gray, the mountains and the trees and the leaves, and then there's this giant thing that's sitting there staring at me. It looked like a football player. You've heard all of them. The steroids, weightlifter, just massive shoulders, massive biceps. And I think it was sitting kind of behind some bushes and an outcropping because I couldn't see the bottom half of it. I could only see the top half. And it was like it was sitting with its arms in front of it, staring at me. Just it had a blank, not I wouldn't say a blank expression. He wasn't happy or angry, but it was just flat lips, staring at me. I'm staring at this thing. And it was all, I mean, it was awesome. It's like all these years that I've spent researching this subject and looking into it, and just I love to think about it and ask questions and here it is. I'm looking at a Sasquatch. I couldn't believe it. So I'm staring at it. It felt like hours, but of course it was probably only 30 seconds, maybe a little bit longer. But when you're staring at something like that, a second feels like an hour. It feels like an eternity. But I'm staring at it, and I was like, I got to get this on video. So I keep my eyes on it. I reach into my pocket to get my phone, pull the phone up in front of me. I hit record. I have a video of it. It's only 17 seconds, but I zoom into it to try to get it as close as possible to see it. And when you're making a video for people to watch, you want to add commentary. So I was trying to figure out what to say because I am filming something that doesn't exist. I'm looking at a creature that's not real. It doesn't exist. And here I am with it on video. And I kind of laughed like, man. And when I did that, it dropped its arm. It had its arms in front of it, and it kind of dropped its arm, its right arm, and it kind of leaned a little bit. And I wasn't looking. I had the camera in front of me, the phone, but I wasn't looking at the camera. I was just looking at the thing, but I was filming it. Well, my eyes were on the thing, so this shock and awe. I'm almost in this weird state where it's hard to even describe the emotions. You know, it was just so overwhelming. But when it moved its arm, it's like all that shock and awe wore off immediately. And I was overcome with the sense of dread and fear that I've never felt before. I mean, it wasn't even fear, because fear is one thing, but what washed over me was like a dread, like an existential dread. Like you can't run, you can't hide. It's just this overbearing pressure on you. And all of a sudden, like my rational mind kicked back in, and I'm like, oh my, I'm 4 miles up a mountain alone, hiking alone. There's this giant living, breathing creature that's sitting staring at me. It looks like an ape. It looks like a gorilla. And I'm like, I don't know what it wants, what it's thinking. It could easily kill me if it wanted to. So all of that came rushing through me, and I just turned and left. I just turned off the phone, and I just turned around and quickly started walking away, which even at the time, even when I was walking away, I was like, why didn't I go up to it or film longer? It was only 17 seconds. It felt like I was watching it for hours. It was 17 seconds. But when you're in that state, like there was no option to go up to it or say hello or interact, or none of that was going through my head. It was just, I have to get away from this thing. It was so primal. It was like an instinct. I wasn't even thinking. I just went away. I was like, I have to get out of here. I have to leave. So there's that. And I'm walking probably about a minute later. I've walked away. I'm turning around to see. I can't see him behind there, whatever. And at this time, the noises came back. The forest became alive again. The birds were chirping and you could hear the leaves and everything. It was back to normal, which was so jarring. I mean, it was so crazy to think about because the entire interaction that I had with that thing, from the first time I turned around to look at it to when I turned around to leave, it must have been maybe a minute, maybe even less than a minute. Because, oh man, it felt like hours. It really did. So I went from a state of jubilation to a state of dread like that. So anyway, I'm walking away from it and I'm like, did that just happen? I checked my phone. There it is. I've got the video. Of course, it's the typical blob squatch, but it's there. And frankly, the video, I just have that because without it, the story would still be there. But I wanted something more to kind of prove to others, because that's what everybody wants to do. They want to prove that this thing is real. So I'm looking at my phone and there it is. And I can't believe it. The fear is gone. Everything's back to normal. Of course, now I'm turning around to try to see if there's more, or if he's back there. There's nothing there. Birds are chirping. Everything's great. Everything's back to normal. But, and again, I should mention, because that was the encounter with the Sasquatch. But what happens next is a little bit more strange. Now, like I said before, that I've read about this topic for years. And when I got this opportunity to go to Washington, to go exploring up in the Pacific Northwest, I really wanted to, well, I know that's where the hotspot of Sasquatch activity is in the entire world. I was kind of hoping, maybe I'd see one. That was kind of not my entire goal, but I really wanted to see one. So when I was hiking alone, when the couple had gone ahead and I was alone back up on the mountain coming down from the peak, they tell you you're supposed to make noise if there's bears. You don't want to be hiking quietly to sneak up on wildlife. So I'm kind of singing a little song or whistling, and I was half jokingly like singing a song about Sasquatch. I was like, hey, it'd be cool to see you, Bigfoot. Just kind of sing-songy, whatever, just not even paying attention to it. And then a few minutes later, I see one. So that was really strange, how convenient, what a coincidence that was. I don't believe in coincidences, but that's what they call it. So anyway, I'm walking away from this thing. I've got the video. I'm so excited. I'm looking at it. I'm hiking down the trail. And at some point, looking back on it now, I think I know where I made a wrong move. The trail kind of did a dog leg about 90 degrees or more to the left around this big rock. But I was still looking at my phone. I was kind of looking at the trail below me, and I went right instead of going left, now that I'm thinking about it. But at the time, I had no idea. I was like, this is the trail. I can see the little path. I climbed down this little cliff, and I'm walking and walking, and all of a sudden I look around, and I'm not on a trail. I'm lost. I don't know where the trail is. I try to go back, but you have to understand, this mountain, it's so steep that I would have to climb straight up like that cliff, all these rocks. I mean, and I had already walked a few yards or a few dozen yards. I don't know exactly how much it was, but I was like, okay, well, I have the trail kind of map on your Google Maps saved on the phone. It's not updating. I didn't have internet service, but I did have kind of the approximate trail saved on my phone. So I was like, okay, I'm sure I'll find it. I'll just keep walking and I'm sure I'll find it. And of course, you're not supposed to do that. If you ever get lost, you're supposed to retrace your steps. But I will say, when I noticed that I was lost and I knew that I should go back, to be honest, I didn't want to go back because that thing was back there. I did, it's kind of goofy to think about, but I really didn't want to get any closer back up that mountain because it was still a little scary. I was excited and happy that it happened, but it was terrifying. It was the scariest thing that's ever happened to me. So I didn't turn around. So I kept going. And predictably, I got even more and more lost. And I became lost on this mountain for about an hour or more. It was 5:30 was when I saw the thing. it must have been around 6 when I noticed that I was not where I'm supposed to be. And I'll tell you what, being lost on a mountain when the sun is going down and you just saw a Sasquatch, this giant, massive creature, and there's bears, there's cougars, there's all sorts of wildlife. And I'll tell you what, being lost on a mountain is pretty scary. I'm 3.5 miles up this mountain, 2 hours minimum hike, minimum 2 hours to get down. And so, I'm lost on this mountain. I'm sliding down. The mountain got so steep that I was sliding down at certain parts, holding on to these branches and small shrubs because it was more than 45 degrees. I mean, it was almost straight down, holding on to trees to not fall. And I reached a small area, kind of sat down and gathered my thoughts, and I started to hear woodknocks. Now, the first time, I was really excited. It was awesome. I was so excited to hear those woodknocks. I'd never heard them. They're so loud. I actually picked up a stick to try to hit a tree, and it was the most pathetic little funk you could ever think of. These things, I don't know what they're smacking on the trees, how big those logs are, what that noise is, but it was so loud. It was like a baseball player like hitting a home run, like whack. So I'm sitting there and I hear a woodknock. That's kind of freaked me out. So I keep going. And I heard probably about 6 or 7 woodknocks in total while I was lost. I would hear them from my right shoulder, from behind my right shoulder, and I would hear them from behind my left. So I'm assuming that there was more than one. People have said that they don't travel alone. They're usually in packs, and you see one, but you don't see the other 3. That's what people have told me, but I was hearing them from both directions, from my left and my right. So that was a little unnerving, but the sun was going down quick. The shadows were growing longer. I'm not getting scared. I'm terrified because I came to the realization that even if I was on the trail, I still have 3 miles to go. That's a long way to go on switchback trails on a mountain. But me, I'm sliding down this mountain. I'm totally lost. The phone is running out of battery. It's not accurately showing where the trail should be. So it's getting pretty terrifying. And eventually, it sounds kind of goofy, but this is what happened. I sat down, and of course, if you've ever researched this topic, you hear that people report having telepathic communications. They call it mind speak, whatever label you want to call it. But I kind of just sat down. I was at my wit's end, and I just kind of thought in my head, I had nothing to lose. I was like, "Hey, Sasquatch, can you help me find the trail? I just want to go home. I just want to get off this mountain. I don't want to intrude on your space." Just thinking in my head, I was like, I have nothing to lose. Why don't I just send this thought out? Hey, Sasquatch, can you help me get home? Essentially, nothing happens, of course. And I'm like, okay, that was kind of silly, but I just kept going. So the mountain is getting real steep now. I'm holding on to these small saplings and bushes and branches to slow down so I don't slip and fall down this mountain. And I was kind of in this half bowl shape. It was like a gully, but kind of like a small ravine. It was kind of a bowl shape. And I'm just sliding down, right down, just going down pretty slow because it's so steep that I'm literally almost like standing, but I'm vertical with the ground. I'm holding on to branches. And that's when I remember, because I was holding on, I just let go of the branch, and I'm kind of making my way down. And over my right shoulder comes the scariest thing that's ever happened. It was a roar. Like, I'll do it. It was like a roar. It was short, like it was a roar, really short. Less than a second. But it sounded like a lion, a dragon. I don't know what you'd call it, but my entire chest reverberated, like it was vibrating. It was so powerful. This roar just shook my entire body, and it felt like it was coming right behind me, like right from behind over my right shoulder. And I'll tell you what, I mean, it was just primal instinct. I was like, I have to get away from this noise. Just my brain wasn't even working. My body just turned left because it came over from my right. I'm going down. It comes over from my right shoulder. So I'm like, just 90 degrees, turn left and go. And I can't run because it's so steep. So I'm hustling. I'm trying to get away from that noise. That's the only way I can describe what I was doing. So instead of going down the mountain, I'm going left now. And I'm going left. I'm holding on. I'm freaking out, like, wow, what was that? I'm trying to get away from this thing. Probably about 50 yards later or so. I kind of calmed down. I look around. There was nothing there. I knew what it was. I knew it was a Sasquatch. What else is making a roar like that? It wasn't a bear. It wasn't a lion. It did sound like a lion, though, like an actual lion. But I turn around. There's nothing behind me. I kind of relax, and I keep going. Just try. I see a little clearing up ahead, and I'm like, let me just get there, settle down, collect my thoughts. The sun is continuing to go down. It's about 7 o'clock now. Starting to hide behind the first mountains there. So I reach a small little clearing, and there's a little cliff. And I go to the cliff, and I look down, and there's the trail. And it was right there. It's down this little cliff, probably up 15, 20 feet. I climbed down it. I'll tell you what, Vic, I've never been so happy to see a trail in my life. Just seeing that man-made trail was the most joy I've ever felt in my entire life. I found it. There it is. I'm at the trail somehow. So I'm celebrating. I'm excited. I'm going down the switchback. It's just winding back and forth, back and forth. And the trail goes a little bit right. So now I can kind of see that little bowl, that little gully that I was lost in where I was sliding down. It's way up there, but I can see it. And the crazy part is that it's so crazy that this even happened to me. If I had continued sliding down where I was, if I kept going down that gully, it turned probably less than 20, 30 yards, just drop off into these shale and gravel kind of cliffs. They're just kind of like, I don't know how to describe it, but the mountain kind of fell away into shale. So instead of dirt and tree, and bushes and all that and rock, it's shale. It's like gravel chunks, like little chunks of gravel. And they just fall 80 feet or more. The mountain dropped off. So it boggles my mind to think about, because it was already so steep that I was holding on to branches to not slip and fall down. But like, if I had continued probably another, and the crazy thing is, I couldn't see that from when I was sliding down in that gully. You couldn't really see that it did that. It just looked like it kept going down. But as I was on the trail and looking at where I was lost, I realized that if I had kept going less than even 20 yards, I would have slipped, fell, broken a bone, broken my back, died. There's no way you could survive falling 80 feet or whatever it was. It was huge. I mean, multiple stories. So, man, it's even when I'm telling this, I have goosebumps all over my arms. My hair is standing up on my neck. It's so unbelievable. So whatever made that roar, because again, remember, I'm going down the mountain. My objective is to go down and get to the trailhead, to get back down. And when that roar happened, instead of going down, I just went left. And it was like primal. I wasn't like, well, logically I should turn here. No, just get away from that noise. Get away from that scary noise as fast as you can. So I started going left. So whatever made that roar at that exact moment basically saved my life, because first of all, it helped me find the trail. I would have never turned left. There's no reason for me to go left. I was not planning on going left or right, for that matter. I was going down. So the fact that this roar that terrified me so much, my body, it was like primal. I felt like an animal. Just run, just get away from that noise. I turn left, go about 100 yards, and there's the trail. And if I had kept going down the path that I was, there was nothing else to grab onto. No more branches, no more saplings. I would have slipped on that shale and just tumbled down. So my request came true. My two requests came true. Before I saw the Sasquatch, I really wanted to see one, and I was kind of projecting that thought. I was projecting that, and it happened. I got to see one. And then when I was lost and I was sitting down there at wit's end, I have nothing else to lose. I just asked, hey, hey, Sasquatch. I said in my mind, hey, Sasquatch. It sounded so goofy because that's not, that's probably not their name, but I just said, hey, Sasquatch, can you help me find my way home? And whatever made that roar at that exact moment, it saved my life. And it was him. It was the Sasquatch. So, of course, I run down. I probably got down the mountain in less than an hour and a half. I mean, I was flying down those switchbacks, just flying. And I get down to the bottom, and I met the couple probably a few hundred yards from the trailhead. So I caught up to them on the trail. I'm all out of breath. I can't believe what just happened. They're looking at me like I'm crazy. Like, where were you? Why are you so out of breath and sweating? And I was like, I just saw Sasquatch. Oh, I was lost. I couldn't get the words out. Oh, my goodness. I remember I was so happy to see them. I was so happy to see other humans, and got back down the trail, went back to camp. And what's interesting, the first 2 days were uneventful in my trip, and the next 3 days were uneventful. So this one day on this trip was so out of the ordinary. So many strange coincidences happened to me that I can't explain. I saw the Sasquatch. It saved my life. I was lost on a mountain, and it saved my life, probably 20, 30 yards away from falling down that cliff. So it was definitely a day that it's been a year and a half, a little over a year and a half. I don't think there's been a day where I don't think about that day. It's been the defining moment of my life after that. Right now, I can see the Sasquatch clear as day in my mind. I can see him sitting right there, every detail, the way the hair was moving, on his arms. And when he dropped that arm, I remember it snapped me out of that trance that I was in, because when he moved, it went from, wow, this is cool, this little magical creature, to that's a giant creature that's staring at you. And it has intelligence. I always say this. I've stared at bears, elephants, dogs, cats, whatever you want. Sure, some of those animals, they do have an intelligence in their eyes. But this thing was, I don't even want to call it an animal, because it was human-like, When you stare another human in the eyes, you can tell there's intelligence, like real intelligence, higher intelligence. And that thing, man, I can see its eyes right now. I can just see them. So that was essentially the end of my Sasquatch encounter.
Well, that's it for tonight's show. If you've had a Bigfoot sighting and would like to be a guest, please go to mybigfootsighting.com and let us know. Thanks for listening. Have a great night.
Seen a bunch of rundown no-horse towns where the church is the backbone, loves in the plow, and the five-string melodies grooving, with the farmland rows where the roots run deep, beyond the noise of the busy streets, where the songs of the South are soothing. When I hear the front porch picking down, home rhythm ringing out, I don't run from banjo music. Yeah.